Hi everybody, be right back. Alright. Just had to get some more light in the room. It's kind of dark here in New York State for a Saturday at 8:03 in the morning. Yesterday the sun was out at like 7 and it was very bright, and now it's all dreary and depressing, kind of. Alright. I know probably many of you are not on, but I just wanted to put this out there anyways. We had a little bit of a development in our group the last 24 hours, and I wanted to explain to you what was kind of going on, and to set kind of things straight if anybody was confused or thought the message was more of a personal hit or anything. At no time and no means would I ever actually personally try to put something out there that would trigger anybody, okay? So what apparently happened is that I had posted, hey Amanda, I had posted a feel-good video yesterday, and I was at work all day, so I couldn't see until I saw it this morning. I got a notification from Facebook that that specific post was reported to Facebook for going against community standards and something else, like for content or something. So I was kind of concerned a little bit because I really didn't think, I mean, I know the message was really, really hard, but I figured that everybody in this group was, you know, adults enough to be able to take information and then be like, oh, no, I don't agree with that, and just move on, versus actually reporting it to Facebook for them to look at because they didn't agree with the views. It's kind of sad, but it is what it is. I don't fault them. They did what they had to do. They did what they felt was right. Yes, it was a triggering subject. It was about masks and about the underlining issue about why we do this, and about death, and realizing when we transition that when somebody dies, it's not actually their death. It's actually a different view. It's them being over there, even though they can't. We can't see them. I only shared it because there were points in it that I agreed with. Not the whole thing, but when I share something, I figure it might help somebody else. So I didn't mean to share it and trigger somebody, but at the same time, it's also what causes us to rethink things and to wake up out of the slumber that a lot of us are in. I, for one, was in a lot of slumber this past year with all the things that I thought were correct with my own family, and then this whole pandemic, shared with me things that came to light about the truth of how my family actually works and what they actually think and why I'm in the position I'm in, and that they're not really helping me. So it's just I used it as a catalyst for some people to be more aware of things, more or less a catalyst for people to be like, hey, that's an interesting, different, opposing viewpoint. Let me think about that. Let me see how I feel about that. In no way did I mean that you guys have to do anything about one way or the other way. However you deal with the pandemic is fine. It's up to you if you feel like you need to, you know, do the things that you need to do. I even wear a mask when I'm out on the thing. You know, I don't judge anybody who does or anything. In the beginning, I was also triggered by masks and things like that too, just because of my own, you know, personal things I had to work through. So I totally understand what happened. I just feel that it was kind of, personally, I would have, when I go about things and I see things on social media and things like that, I don't feel like I need to report them necessarily. I feel like, especially if I'm in a group with somebody, instead, I mean, the individual did feel like they had to comment, which is fine, and then I rebutted, but that by that time they had actually left the group, which is fine. They can do whatever they want, but they chose the action to report the actual post to Facebook, and so it put a slight on the group, and it like docked it down, and then now I don't know what Facebook's going to do, but because usually when you do that, they put you on like a 24 to 48 hour watch to make sure you're not spreading any more things that doesn't align with Facebook. And that's what I was kind of worried about, because a lot of us light workers and truth seekers are being targeted for that exact reason. When we speak our own truth and other people do not agree with it, then they report it. And then so a lot of this has to do with us not aligning spiritually with the programs that the Facebook and the higher run agendas are doing. So, I mean, personally, that's why I haven't actually said anything about my own views about things, because I know there are certain people that instead like to they're working with their ego is what it's going on. They think that they're, in order to get right with themselves, they have to feel like they have to report something that does not align with them. Which, okay, that's fine if you feel like that. Personally, there's a lot of growth that needs to go with that. There's a lot of stuff that they will have to go in the path to ascension a little bit. They're a little bit not as advanced as some other people who can take opposing viewpoints and be like not triggered by it. Believe me, I'm still triggered by a bunch of stuff myself. I just had a talk with my boyfriend last night, and I was kind of triggered by certain things because he was not taking his pain meds, and he was trying to get his pain meds, and we're dealing with that stuff and the health stuff here in New York, and his Medicaid didn't go through, and he was going to have to pay $100 for his pain meds. So that triggered him, and then it triggered me because I was going to... it was also a lesson that I learned personally because I was going to put up that $100 for him, and believe me, all these triggers are signposts in our paths to help us ascend and to reevaluate what is good for us and what is no longer serving us, to help us on the ascension path. And especially right now when we're getting all these things happening, right before the big Age of Aquarius and the solar flare and everything like that. And the conjunction between Saturn and Jupiter, this winter solstice or summer solstice, depending on where you are, the December 21st. So it's a lot of different information, but basically I was triggered by that because I was going to put up that money because I'm working through my own lesson of having to please people and having to always help them out, regardless of whether or not it's going to be a detriment to my own health. I had to sit there. Now, granted, he was tough and he's like, don't even know. And he walked out before I could actually do anything. And this time around, like before a couple years ago when we first started dating, I would have just been like, no, put it on my credit card. I'm good, whatever. And then he even told me, he goes, I don't have $100 to pay you back, so don't do that. And I listened this time. I listened to that, and I listened to my guides because I've been working with my guides, and my guides said, follow that. Even though it's uncomfortable, even though you don't like it, even though you're scared of what's going to happen, how he's going to react, all this stuff. Because when I was scared, I was like, no, I'm going to fix this so he doesn't react that way, so I don't have to deal with that kind of a situation. And it was more like me trying to avoid stuff that I need to face. So what happened was he walked out, and I was thinking, I'm like, okay, well, I have the money on my credit card, but it's going to make it really tight. And then the point that stuck with me is the fact that he's like, I don't have the money to pay you back. And the fact that I have other bills that I have to pay, that triggered me into also thinking, you know what, this might actually be beneficial because I can't see the outcome down the line. So all else came, and we came home. And then I started sitting here thinking about things. And I said, you know what? This is a teaching moment for me. So I sat here and I felt uncomfortable. And I felt that, like, oh, I don't know how he's going to react. And I don't want to be involved in something that's going to make me feel bad or feel not so good. Kind of like a dark night of the soul. But like very low-key. And after I sat here for a little bit, thinking about things and processing information, as we're supposed to do when we get into these lessons, I sat there and I thought, you know what, this is right. He's correct. Because right at that moment, I thought that paying that and having him have his meds was the only answer. And it wasn't. After sitting and contemplating on it and thinking about all the other different avenues and all the other projections of like how the storyline can go and things like that, I realized that this is a teaching point for him too. Because if I had paid for that, he wouldn't have been able to know how to call the health insurance people, hi Tamara, on his own. He wouldn't have been able to realize that in New York State you have to jump through a bunch of hoops for different things for your health insurance and things like that. it was also a teaching point for him to actually be able to be more of a quote-unquote grown-up, take care of his own health. Sorry, my computer just keeps going into no man zone. But anyways, it was definitely a teaching point, and I had to see that. But it only took me to have to feel those uncomfortable feelings and to sit with them, to contemplate them, to realize what it is, and not to just sit there and ignore them. So a lot of times what we do is we sit here and we ignore them because we don't want to feel them, and we'll get distracted in something else. Sorry, it's very dry in my house. And we'll end up, instead of understanding the lesson and trying to process the lesson, we'll put it on the back burner. We'll get busy doing chores. We'll do a game. We'll sit down with our kids. We'll get dinner ready or something. And then by that time, it's already out of our system or on the back burner, so we're not really sitting there and processing it. Throat chakra. Apparently I need to talk about stuff. So another thing was, when she reported it, it actually made the percentages in our group down. So the reported content was red flagged. So it said that we had reported content, and then in that case, Facebook would have been monitoring our group for other content, because it's not that I reported it, it's that a member reported it. So when a member reports something in a group, Facebook looks at that way more than, say, the person who's running the group, because it's member-centric, aka group-centric. So Facebook takes very good pride in what the member's content is, and if a member's having a good experience or a bad experience. So that basically is a trigger for a lot of what's going on in Facebook too. So if you see a lot of things getting flagged or reported or whatever, you know something Facebook's trying to smack down and make it so that the user's the best, has the best experience that they can. Which is all good and fine. It's just when people are trying to explain the truth and different points of view so that it can be a learning and a teaching avenue, it causes that kind of avenue to be sussed out and smoldered, which is what they're trying to do. So that's why you see a bunch of people jumping off of Facebook because it's censored and things like that, or because too many people are still kind of in between the whole I don't want to say anything because of retaliation and it would make my life a lot worse type of a thing, or the fact that they're jumping onto MeWe in place of Facebook, or Parler in place of Twitter, because those aren't censored. And it's more of a unified situation where you can have whatever opinion you want, and you just learn, like how it was way back when, to scroll through and you can have your own stuff, but you don't feel the need to actually push your opinions on other people or to tell people that that's wrong because it doesn't align with your own personal views. So this is the interesting avenue that we've been in. Luckily, because she removed herself from the group, and I ended up having to block her because of other things. But I'm sending her love and light. Basically, with her leaving the group, our stats went back up to normal. If she had stayed in the group, then our stats would have been weird, and they would have actually looked at more of our content and stuff. But considering it was only one post in the myriad of posts that we have in here, and it was just, one thing that somebody just couldn't see the lesson in it because they were too close to it, which I understand, I get, because I've been in positions that have been there where, the thing is, if we don't look at the core of what is happening to us right now, and the core of the whole entire reason why we're either complying or not complying or whatever, or if you're in the middle of the whole spectrum instead of on one side or the other, it does resolve around death. When the flu first started happening, people were scared that their family members were going to die, okay? Hence why all the precautions did it. But what I like to do is use it as a teaching, saying, okay, hence seatbelts for people, because people kept dying and things like that. But you can't stop a person when it's their time to go. When it's their time to go, it's their time to go. Like, okay, I start looking at it, like, I looked at Phil's video as, okay, and personally, I've changed my views over the years from being very rigid to also being very open, I'd say, because I've actually dealt with death a lot in my own personal life, and I've seen the transitions. I've been visited by my deceased uncle. I've dealt with the grief. I've dealt with the betrayal. I've dealt with my views being thrown upside down and me living in a house of cards and my house of cards completely falling apart. It's all part of the ascension process. It's part of the dark night of the soul, which we're all going through right now. It's a part of the triggering. It's part of the lessons. It's why we actually came into this earth and this existence, to learn the polarities of, like, the different situations we're in here. So I just share it as a reason to be like, okay, this is how I've seen life. This is how I've experienced life. Now, granted, Phil is very, very abrupt. Phil says it like it is. And sometimes I do and sometimes I don't. You have to also know when you can do it and when you can't. I thought that being in this group, everybody was secure enough in their own beliefs not to be triggered and not to take it offensively or personally. Apparently this one member did, which just means that they have to work through their trauma a little bit more. And they might have had a lot more death maybe in their family, so that's why they triggered it, or maybe they're still grieving for somebody who's left and they don't really understand the concept of the fact that they're not necessarily gone, that they're still here, but they're just not in the physical form. So, hold on a minute. I think my cat's getting involved in something. I am so sorry. My cat decided to jump up on my dresser in the other room and knock things down when I'm not looking. She just, Mommy, I want attention. So anyways, I've dealt with death to the point where I don't resonate with the fact that they're dead, they're no longer here, and that's the end of it. You know, I've learned that when somebody passes on or dies, it actually just means that they're still here in spirit, even though we can't hug them or something else in physical form. But I've processed that, and I know that I can still call on them to help me in the ether. I've had it where I've called on my uncle or my grandmother, who just recently died in February, and said, hey, I'm feeling depressed, I'm feeling low, I really need that love. Can you please send me some? And then all of a sudden, I'll be at a place where I can feel that love. I'll just feel like I'm wrapped up in a nice blanket, or that I'm having that hug. Now, if you're in a position where you're so wrapped up in that grief, you're not going to be as open to that. So what has to happen is you have to process that grief and be more open to a different mindset where nothing is set in stone. You have to see beyond the veil. So a lot of people say they're spiritual and all that stuff, but they also have a lot more to do and to work through. I mean, everybody's spiritual, but to be able to, I meant ascension, not spiritual, ascended. To be able to say that you're ascended and things like that, you have to be able to think 5D. I'm not ascended completely either. I still have my own human faults. If you follow Lori Ladd, she does the same thing. She talks about how she's human in a human experience, and she falters every now and then too. We all do. It's part of the process. Don't beat yourself up for it. That's why I'm not really beating her up for it when, she did what she needed to do. And actually, she did it the correct way too. Because that's why they have that report content. Personally, it was flagged more or less because of the whole concept of it's a trigger word and it's a trigger thing. Now, granted, personally, when I viewed the video, I was actually, you know how like when you have video content and somebody does video, you have the little bell on the top? Well, I had the bell set to all notifications for Phil. But because he's sharing content that's more not aligned with everybody and more out of the box and, off the cuff, gonna be triggering people, Facebook decided to make it so that you can't follow him anymore. So my little bells are like got the X through him, so I can't follow him anymore. It could also be that he's got 24,000 followers now all of a sudden, or it just could be the fact that Facebook's just watching him, and his content's becoming more and more bold, so to speak, and basically not hidden in like, I don't know, like not as open, I guess, as some of us would want, and then now he is. Anyways, my point is, sorry, I'm just kind of all over the place right now. Cat threw me off. My point is, so I think we're going to be good. I don't think they're going to be doing anything. I can still post in here. I can still do stuff. Like I said, she left the group, so it made our stats go back to normal. So I don't think Facebook's going to be looking at the group or doing anything crazy. I feel sad and a little hurt that would have to be, but I understand why she reported it, because it was a trigger for her. She's definitely got to work through a lot of the triggers within herself. It just shows that she's just got a little bit more to suss out and work with, and this is the perfect time to work with that right now. So I just wanted to come on here and say, I understand, I did not mean to post anything that would be against anybody in here. I just figured that we'd all be grown-ups and be able to either, like, say, do a comment so that I can see it and be like, oh, I'm sorry this triggered you, let's work through that, or that instead of just being able to just report the post and the group and then leave, which means you don't want to necessarily work through what was triggered, you don't want to see the other side of it that could possibly have any kind of value to help you see an alternative point of view, to help you yourself grow instead of having rigid ideas type of a thing. That's the whole reason why I posted it. I don't post anything in this group that I feel is just warranted to start something. It's more or less to do a teaching point, to see other aspects of things, to broaden everybody's mindset, to dislodge old paradigms that are keeping everybody stuck, things like that. And sometimes when we go through these things, it's not a pleasant choice, it's not a pleasant experience, but it is, what kind of basically people need for them to go to the next level in ascension and of their spiritual journey. I always think of it as the point where when you were a kid, did you ever go against your parents? Did you ever, like, sneak out or start drinking when you shouldn't have, or underage, or any of this stuff? It's the same kind of a concept, because they were like, no, this is wrong and this is wrong. You have to follow the rules and all stuff. But when you're younger, you're like, nuh-uh, I don't believe that. I go against that, and so I'm going to do this. Whereas then when you get older, you're like, well, it wasn't really that big of a deal. And now I realize that, say, that opinion I had of mom or dad wasn't really, anything, and I've changed my views on it. Same thing with anything. Clothes. If you're trending into clothes, you can change your view throughout the whole thing, but in order to know what your views and your personal preferences are, you have to be confronted with something that doesn't align with you. So you know that you don't like that experience, you don't like that color, you don't like those shoes, you don't like that vacation, that experience made you not feel so good in your so that you can be like, okay, well, that's fine. So she actually did do the right thing and actually removed herself from the group, so she didn't feel like the group was validating anymore, just because of one post after years of doing something. So that's kind of, it's sad, and I will send her love and light, and I will bring Archangel Michael and Archangel Raphael to help her heal her wounds and her triggers, because that's what we all need. We don't need to be like, oh my God, that person's a bad person because they did this, and they're not evolved enough, and they're not, advanced enough, and they're not going to go anywhere in life. What just happened might have been a trigger for her that will stay with her into another experience that will actually make her be like, oh, well, this is another experience. These keep coming up. Why do these keep coming up? Maybe this is a lesson. Okay, if this keeps coming up, eventually I'm going to have to face it one way or another, because the way the universe is and the way we write our charts, we're going to keep getting slammed with the same situation. Henceforth, my boyfriend and I last night. Another fight. Well, it wasn't a fight. It was another conversation that was a little bit more on pins and needles than it needed to be. And it was still something that we're both having to face. It's uncomfortable. I don't like it. you know, go to bed a little bit angry. We don't have to live in the same house, at least, so that's the thing. But he knew he was, you know, out of line, so he sent me an apology. I knew I was out of line, so I sent him an apology, kind of a thing. And it's just, it's not that you were totally out of a line. Like, before, we were like at each other's throats when stuff like this happened. So the fact that it's coming up again just means that I need to work on stuff myself, because I was putting false ideals that he was basically, I was trying to get him to be what I wanted him to be. And because of that transition and the polarness of it, it showed me that I'm putting my own feelings on him, and it's not fair to him. 2, he also knew he was out of line by saying what he did and realizing, oh shoot, I speak out of turn. I put thoughts and things into words, and I threaten things, and I really need to work on that, so that, you know, and I'm trying to teach him that words and thoughts are things, so that if you keep spewing out all this hatred and anger at one person that did you wrong, it's not going to get you anywhere. It's not going to compel you or catalyst you into a more ascended state. You got to work with that, and he is a lot better, because he was triggered a couple months back, and he wanted to, like, do everything to, like, get this person. But my grandfather's up, apparently. Sorry. I was trying to do this before my grandfather got up. 8:30, so. So he could do that, and he's come a long way, because he used to get triggered like that, and now he's not. He's actually being more aware of how he reacts in situations, which is the purpose of these lessons coming up and constantly. Once we're fully integrated into the new 5D or whatever, and we've learned our lessons, and we've been able to be objective enough where we're not getting personally triggered, we're not feeling that thing, and we can control our emotions to the point where we can be like, he's making a Hot Pocket. I heard the microwave door slam. So that we can just look at it and be like, okay, well, that doesn't feel good. That's uncomfortable. Breathe through those and process it and let that go. We are also doing this for the collective. Us light workers, versus more than anybody else, are feeling the brunt of it way more than everybody else. It is part of the whole package deal, is what we signed on for, is the way shores for everybody else. And it is a lot of hard work, and a lot of soul work, and a lot of internal work. So what probably would have happened was you or anybody else would have had a personal, individual dark night of the soul, which I had back in 2017, where you kind of wake up to the idea that what you thought in life just ended up crumbling. You had a house of cards, and then that all fell down, and you're pretty much learning how to swim on your own. It's like you were thrown into the pond and been like, oh, sink or swim. So then you're kind of like, okay, I had all these ideas about people and things and everything under the sun, and now I'm realizing bit by bit, I'm taking down the veils of falsity and false flags, things like that, realizing my own personal truth and things like that. Then years went on, and now we're having a global collective dark night of the soul. So a lot of things that are coming up now are global, that have to be processed. The cultural issues, the financial issues, the pandemic issues, whatever you want to call it, the whole behind the scenes about the charges with everybody and everybody getting sick, and then things like that, the whole disclosure of the extraterrestrials, Galactic Federation, all that is being sussed out, and we're being enlightened. And a lot of times people go around and say, oh, enlightenment is so much fun, it's really good, and it's really not. It's actually one of the most toughest experiences you will ever have to go through. To be honest, I almost view it as like giving birth and being like, oh my god, you go through so much pain and heartache, but at the end, when you see your baby and you see how far you've come and how strong you are, you're like, oh my god, that feeling is the oh my god moment, that like, oh yes, okay, I can do this now. But you have to go through all those feelings of being uncomfortable, of the pain, of the triggers, of the having to be face to face with stuff that you thought was truth, and you find out it's not. It was all just false flags. Well, it looks like I have dark eyes. And things like that. So anyways, I'm gonna get off because it is about 8:32, and I think I've been on here about half an hour, a little bit more. But I just wanted to let you guys know I'm sorry if I posted anything that was going to offend anybody, but I also post it just so that people can take with them what they want, and if they don't like it and they don't want to listen to it, just ignore it. Scroll on by. It's fine. If you feel drawn to reporting it, okay, that's fine for you too. It's just, if you end up reporting a lot of this stuff that we have, the group will be shut down, just so you know. And we will have no more group. Because Facebook does take that stuff extremely serious. Which is unfortunate if that ended up happening. That's one reason why I got rid of, well, I didn't get rid of, Facebook got rid of a bunch of people that were quote-unquote lurkers a couple years back. 2 years ago. Because they wanted groups to be more centric. And, you know, full of value and stuff. But anyway, I knew it was kind of going to be a triggered video. I wasn't sure about posting, but Spirit led me to sit there and post it, which I don't know how it's going to play out with her, but maybe it's a catalyst for her down the road. It had to have been seen, it had to have been shown, so that she'd be more aware of things, and then down the line, maybe it'll pop up again for her as a teaching point. I don't know, or maybe she won't. Maybe she'll end up just blocking it out for the rest of her life or whatever, which is fine. That's her path. That's what she chose. It's all good. We're all good. Where are we at? You know, so it is what it is. That's why I also knew not to post it on my wall, because I've got a lot of other friends that are still asleep and don't want to be faced with this spiritualist stuff and have very strong views on mask wearing, views about talking about death and the transition, because they're in the mindset and the paradigm of separation. So, unfortunately, you can't force somebody to awaken. They have to do it on their own. They have to be a catalyst, hence why my boyfriend and I have fights every now and then, because I keep having the urge to be like, wake up, don't you see this, can't you see this? And that's me learning to be like, step back, Jen, it's not for him at this point in time. He will have to learn it himself. Let him learn it himself. Because I have this tendency to be like, can't you guys see this? It would be so much easier if y'all saw this. It would be so much more peaceful, less anger, less heartache, and everybody be more blah. Because I came from the other side, and I still have that open there. I don't have a block there like most people do. So anyways, like I said, I'm being transparent. It's lessons for me as well. So I'm going to show you, I showed you how I deal with things. I will do a couple more videos later on. But right now, I just want to come on here and explain what happened, and that if it triggered anybody, I am sorry. I did not mean it for just to be a trigger. I meant it to be like a catalyst for people to see it, figure out what their viewpoints on it, and then just be like, no, I don't resonate with that. I'm going to leave it alone. Okay, whatever. I'm going to scroll on by. Or for somebody else to be like, oh my gosh, you know, that makes a lot of sense. And, you know, if we think about this thing about separation and, you know, death, and the fact that if we're afraid and we're living out of fear, what are the actions we're doing based on that fear? And if we didn't have that fear, or that other behind, that idea behind the fear that catalyzes that and causes us to form those opinions and those paradigms and then take those actions accordingly, if we didn't have that fear, what would I be doing? Would I still be wearing this mask? Would I still be freaking out? Would I still be concerned about what my this person is, or that person who's got an immune system that's compromised? I have an immune system that's compromised too. I live with my 96-year-old grandfather who's got a catheter and a pacemaker. I'm put in positions every day at my work. The assistant manager that I have, his father's got COVID. And our HR department should be firing our guy who's the head of that, because he said, oh, well, because nobody can cover, you still have to go in. So that put me in a position. I asked him yesterday when I was there, I said, well, you're here, you must have been negative for your test. And he goes, well, it wouldn't have mattered, because even if I was positive, I would still be here. So if culture and society is not also following those rules, it made me realize I'm living out of fear for grant passing, for me having an issue and being in pain, even though no matter what happens, like the only thing I could do to help that situation would be to quit. And then I wouldn't get money because I quit instead of getting fired. And then I'd have to do all these other things and be like, okay, and then I have to call the HR department and be like, this is what's happening, this is what he told my manager, and da-da-da-da. Whereas instead, I could just sit here and be like, you know what? Life is life. We're all going to die at one point or another anyway. It's just, It's not our opinion when somebody dies or when somebody's choice is there. Yes, we can do things to help somebody else out, like wear a mask, wash your hands, do all that stuff if you feel like that's what you need. I do it too. I do both. I'm not wearing a mask now in my own home. Some people would be like, no, you need to wear a mask right now when you're talking on the internet at all times. And then other people would be like, that's silly. Why would you do that? It's the other thing too. I compare it to Howie Mandel, the germaphobe. He all the time was super afraid of getting any kind of germ or whatever and getting sick. Guys, you're gonna get germs. You're gonna have issues. This is a learning curve, a big one. It's about the fact that a lot of people have seen the pain people have been in, and they're afraid for the person who's in that pain and for the other person themselves who doesn't want to be in that pain or that same position. Those are the two main things, okay? If we did not have to fear pain at all, and we didn't feel pain at all, would you be doing the same actions you would be doing now? So if your elderly grandfather or your immunocompromised friend caught it and then had to be put on a ventilator but wasn't in pain because they're like, oh, well, no, I'm fine, whatever, or didn't feel like or didn't see their body wasn't in distress, would you still be doing what you're doing? It's a thing to think about. Some people would say yes. Some people would say no. Some people would be like, I don't know. This is why I shared the content I shared, because, and I know I'm going over now, but because I wanted you guys to think about things, to be more, to break it down into smaller pieces so you can process it, so you can be like, wait a minute, am I only doing this out of fear? Am I only doing this because I personally want that other family member to stay here because I don't want to live without them? Do I personally do this action because I want to save that other person over there? Is it my job to save that person over there? Or did they chart it themselves to pass from this physical existence at any point regardless of what I do? Here's another thought. Do you ever think that maybe we charted these experiences into our lives to be catalysts for another person's passing? Just 2 days ago, there was a guy that just jumped off the bridge over here on Olean Street in my town because he committed suicide. You could have said, hey, I should have talked to that person. Hey, somebody else in their family should have talked to them. Somebody should have reached out. Somebody should have did this. Somebody should have done that. That's so sad. Who knows? Maybe they had corona, but they were an asymptomatic person. Who knows? We don't know all these things. Were they wearing a mask? Were they not wearing a mask? I don't know. I wasn't there. But I know people in East Aurora have it. Hardcore. There's my cat. If you're living out of fear of basically catching this and having adverse reactions, I understand that, but at the same time, this is going to be like the flu. I mark my words. There's going to be a vaccine every single year, like the flu, because the flu is now, quote, null and void. So they're making a new one. This is the whole point of this. And that's why they want you to wear masks, so that they want to see who complied and who didn't. And that's why they're shutting down a bunch of businesses. Yes, it is a real virus, and yes, it does cause death and damage and everything. I would not wish it on anybody, believe me. That's why I do wear masks when I'm around certain other people. But at the same time, it's also causing me problems too. So you can be like, okay, am I doing this for somebody else? Am I doing it for me? Am I doing it not? I mean, do you know how many people have gotten panic attacks because now they have to do this and they're being faced with having to put a mask on? You're like, oh, well, deal with that. People are like, oh, well, deal with that panic attack because you're saving somebody else's life. Well, what if that panic attack causes that person to have internal organ failure to the point where they themselves die? How would you feel about that? Because you felt that they had to do that to save somebody else, and then inadvertently it caused their own passing. You'd still be liable for it, basically, in the spiritual sense, because you made them feel guilty for following the rules, because of your own viewpoints, when they could have been like, hey, I'm going to step outside, I'm not going to do this. Instead, they're like, no, you have to. Because if you don't, then I'm going to shame you, and I'm going to blame you, because you're putting other people at risk. Everybody has to see the other side of everything. You know, everything has got a myriad of different aspects to it. It's not just one way this way or one way that way. That's why I don't watch the media. I don't follow the news. I don't do any of this stuff, okay? Because they're programming your brain. It's brainwashing. Facebook does the same fucking thing. Sorry. I'm getting heated now. But that's my point. My point is everybody has to see through things. You have to see through the fear. You have to see through the separation. You have to see through it. And if you haven't done that yet, you're gonna be forced to, because basically the way we are going right now with the solar flares, the new galactic sun energy coming through, we're being bombarded with it. And next year is not going to be any easier. It might be a little bit easier if things in businesses come back up, but we're going to get the businesses that are all falling down. People are going to have to start over and do something else. There's going to be more chaos because all this stuff that was put up as a house of cards, it's all falling down now because it was all false flags. It was all things that were were put together to tie us down and to make us slaves and to make us comply and to be a human experiment. We are all basically being the human experiment in this. It shows what people will comply, what people you can control, and what people are led by fear, and then what people won't. So I don't also put my face on a bunch of other things or put out a lot of stuff out there because you know that Big Brother's watching, and a lot of these people who are paid by companies are paid to make sure, like when you sign a petition, don't do this, don't do that. I signed petitions before, but then I realized they have that document. So they can find you if you say, like, okay, I'm anti-vax. Then, like, if they do a mandate of vaccinations, they'll be like, oh shit, this person's not vax, so let's go and force them to have something down the line to have vax or something like that. You know, not that they would do that now because our light quotient is too high, and they would probably try it, but it wouldn't really work out. But my point is, this whole entire video is basically about thinking about things that trigger you, realizing that maybe that's triggering you for a reason, for you to go inside and figure out why, to be able to, when you're figuring out why, to be able to come back on the other side of it and say, hey, I found a new idea, I found a new, value in it, I found a new way of thinking about it, and it feels much better. Like, I feel more at ease because I don't have to worry about this or that because it's inevitable that I'm going to pass from this earth anyways. It just depends on whether or not it's going to be this way or that way. A lot of this is because, and I'm saying it again, fear and pain. Pain mostly. If we did not have any pain, do you think everybody would be like, hey, oh, you just got stabbed in the leg, or you got shot, that, and then being in the pain and be like, oh no, it's just, I'm good. It's like Monty Python. If anybody's watched Monty Python, it's like that Black Knight. It's like, it's just a flesh wound when his freaking arm gets shot, pull off or anything. It's funny. It's you really got to figure out what your triggers are, and if you the people that the teachers in the spiritual realm that are above all that or are ascended to the point where they don't have to worry about earthly issues or things are the ones that are like, yes, I can deal with the pain. The pain's not good, but I know it's a teaching avenue, and it's not the end. So when you have that pain and being like, and that fear of, oh my God, is this my last day on earth? Like, I've already had those. I ended up feeling so bad the one time when I was in college because I had period pains and I had all this stuff and I had pinched my nail in my door because of the wind that smacked it, and actually my complete nail fell off completely. I was in so much pain. I took pain pills. I ended up going up and having to take a test, which I was just going to be like, no, I can't. I forced myself up that hill. Oh. And did a bunch of stuff like that. Hold on. Oh, come on. You do this all the time. Oof. And basically, be a human. Basically, I felt like crap. I went to the bathroom and I ended up throwing up, and I felt so bad that I was on that floor in that bathroom, and I was like, no, if I die right now, I don't care. You guys, everybody else can find me dead in the bathroom. It doesn't matter. And at that basic point where I was like, I'm done, it was so relieving. Like, I felt a relief pass over me that I was like, oh, I don't have to worry about people judging me and be like, oh my God, she died in the bathroom, what the hell, and all this stuff. And I knew everybody else in my family would understand. They might mourn and they might feel sick and be like, what happened? But they would know at that point I was above that. I was above the 3D mindset, ego center of, well, this person is that. And that I saw above it. I saw it through the other side viewpoint, the ascended viewpoint. All these little things that we worry about aren't really things that we need to worry about. That's what I'm trying to say. There's a lot more to it. And when you have these experiences where you're kind of out of body or you're above the 3D element of judging and all that smaller mind chatter and petty things that you need to worry about, when you're above that and you're actually up here instead of just in your monkey mind, you feel so much better. You don't worry about how other people are going to judge you. You don't worry about how other people are going to look at the situation. You're above it, basically. You're within that spiritual center of 5D or higher. So anyways, ow, ow, ow. Pain. See, pain. I understand it. But if we didn't have pain, we wouldn't be here learning about pain and learning what catalysts cause it. Hence, another reason, just popped into my head, Salem witch trials. Tortured people to get out truths, which were actually lies, okay? If they had not felt pain and they had not been, tried to be tortured, they would have been like, well, it doesn't matter, okay? The reason why things are done and people cave is because of pain and fear of what's going to happen to either them or somebody they love or are connected to. Okay? If you weren't connected to, if you would be like a complete stranger or say a mass murderer, you'd be like, oh, that mass murderer is not wearing a mask. Or be like, oh, that sexual predator is not wearing a mask. Let me go and tell him that he has to wear a mask because he's got to save that other person. I mean, you can't just pick and choose who these masks or however you're going to be living is there. It's supposed to be for everybody, the collective, and all that, okay? So that's another thing, too. What we think is right, we also only put on certain people or certain groups or certain things. If we want to be enlightened and ascended, everybody across the board, good and bad, have to do the exact same thing if you want to go that way. There's no way that's going to happen. Everybody's going to get this virus, no matter what. It's going to be in everybody. It's going to be everybody, okay? So if you're living in fear of not getting it, it's not going to matter. At some point, you're going to get it, whether or not your symptoms are worse or better, okay? So do what you need to do to feel safe. Wear a mask, wash your hands, whatever you need to do. If you don't feel like doing that, whatever, more power to you. I don't wear a mask in my car. I don't wear a mask right now. My grandpa and I are saying, our governor is saying that it's living room spread now. He's opening up gyms and salons and things. Whereas he shut them down originally, saying that that's where it was spreading. And now all of a sudden he's like, no, that's not where it's spreading. So you have to suss out the truths in a lot of these and how you're getting played. Because believe me, guys, we are getting played hardcore. Hardcore. And now is the time to be aware of it. Now is the time to wake up from it. Now is the time to sit down and be like, okay, well, this happened. Now my governor's doing this. That doesn't align. Wait, that doesn't make any sense. Because technically, if originally we were shutting down these places, and that was where the things were, and everybody was over here, fine, and now all of a sudden those places can reopen because it's not over there, and now it's just in our own homes, that's a little bit weird. Our governor in New York is telling us right now that the whole thing is in your living room. It's living room spread. He's got a PSA out about living room spread. Dude, if you have a wife or a significant other and you're having relations, aka physical content, you're still going to be spreading it, no matter what. It's spread through mouth. I'm pretty sure it's going to be bodily fluids that way too. Even if you have symptoms or whatever, or if you're asymptomatic, it's not going to matter, okay? So now he's like, oh, well, you're talking in your living room, you're sharing knives and forks and things. It's all living room spread now. So it's not necessarily gyms. So you can go out to your gyms, but be very careful at your own house, in your own living room. What? You've lived with these people for years. Now he can't control how other people outside gather at your house, but now he's trying to control your own inside house with your people that you live with, your kids, your husband, your wife, your grandparents. Does that sound logical, people? This is what we gotta look for. We gotta look for the things that don't sound logical. We gotta use our own brains, guys. Suss out what does not sound correct. Well, I shouldn't say correct, because correct is a term that can be used by anybody for a thing. Rather, I should probably say suss out what doesn't resonate with your gut feeling, with your intuition. If it, like, you're, like, second-guessing something, or we're walking down, you hear something, and you're like, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense. Listen to it. Think about it. Process it. Analyze it. Think for yourself. Don't take everybody's word for God's great truth, okay? But anyways, it's almost 9 o'clock, and I've been on here for almost an hour, I think. So I'm going to go check on Gramp and see what he's doing. But I know there's a lot of content in here, but it was all brought on also as a catalyst for what happened in the group. So apparently it needed to be said, because otherwise I wouldn't be doing this live if it wasn't needed to be shared. So yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I'm pretty sure we're good. She left the group, so I'm pretty sure Facebook. It's no longer listed in the content as reported, and it's no longer listed in anything else as reported. And our numbers are fine. The only thing that's showing is that one member left the group, which is fine. So, it must not have been that much of a trigger for Facebook to actually not worry about that. But at the same time, you know, I'll be weird. I'll be watching our group a little bit, and I won't be posting some of his stuff necessarily, just because I think he's starting to get a little bit more triggery, and I don't know if Facebook's actually going to delete his account or not. That's why he's on YouTube, and I follow him on YouTube. That's where I originally found him. But because eventually, if they remove his stuff, then it's just going to show like a blank. This content cannot be seen. So I'd have to go back and delete it anyways out of the group to make it more uniform. But beyond that, yeah, I'll continue doing that. Lori Ladd, she's good too. She doesn't actually say it like Phil does. She's not off the cuff like Phil is, which is why I gravitate both of them. I did have to actually shut down Diane Canfield, because she was getting a little bit too... she didn't resonate with me any longer, because she was putting more politics into things. And I get that politics are involved, but right now, it's more or less a, she wasn't spreading more information, she was spreading more like judgment all of a sudden, because if you weren't with this group, or if you still believe this, then basically you were not enlightened, and I don't believe that. Everybody's enlightened at some point, regardless. I mean, you might see a little spark and then be like, oh, well, I gotta go back to sleep a little bit, which is fine. Everybody's got their own course. Everybody's got their own way of ascending. Nothing's perfect. Nobody's perfect. It's all working out perfectly in God's great, or universe's great, plan. So, all right, I'm going to go figure out what he's doing. It's now 8:56. He probably made himself a TV dinner, which is awesome. He's up early, but the last 2 nights he was up all night long. And I had to hide the remote, because otherwise he has the TV up to like 86 to 90 to 100. I'm like, I have to pull my fan out, so I have to drown out I think he made a Hot Pocket. Hopefully he remembered to put it on a plate, otherwise I have to clean out the refrigerator, or the microwave again. Oh, the joys of living with somebody who's got Alzheimer's and dementia. Hey, but at least he's still at home. I don't know, whatever. Yeah. And not in a nursing home or anything like that, because we're keeping him here as long as we can, for quality of life and for him to enjoy stuff. It's kind of more of a burden on me, but at the same time I enjoy it. Because with the people that we have left, I know eventually he's not going to be here all the time. But I'm going to be sad, like I have with my mother, my uncle, my other uncle, my grandmother, my aunt, and a bunch of other family friends. So I've dealt with death. I've seen the whole aspect of the passing on, the dealing with the grief, seeing that, being visited to the point where I know that just death is not the end. I know that after they come back. You just got to be open to it. You just got to, process the grief to the point where you can be more open to the communication with spirit. And then you'll realize that, you know what, death is not the end. Death is not the only place. Death is not the end all change all. There is more. And to be honest, the person's in way better shape. Way better. They're way better off because they don't have all the physical ailments, the issues that they have here, or, you know, the body that they have to go to the bathroom, they have to puke, they have to, you know, all these bodily functions that are not so fun sometimes, guys. If you're a woman, pregnancy, had to go through pregnancy, breaking the bones, things like that, or having accidents, breaking bones, all these things that, like, when you're on the other side, you don't have any of that. You're like, whee! Like being high all the time, I guess, or something. But anyway. Alright, I'm gonna get off. Thank you guys for watching. Catch the replay if you need to. Like I said, I don't try to post anything that would trigger anybody. I just thought it was an interesting teaching point or teaching moment. Do what you need to do to stay safe. I don't judge anybody for anything. Like I said, I'm sending this lady love and light. I had to block her from the group, unfortunately. Well, she took herself out of the group and then I blocked her, so it doesn't matter. Because she didn't want the content anyway. So I'm going to remove some of the posts if she ever posted on anything, to give her back her own energy, because that's what should be done. So that she is no longer tethered to the group because she no longer wants to be in here, hence why she left. And I respect that, so I'm going to give her back the energy. And that's pretty much what I'm going to do. Alright, I will talk to you guys later. I hope you have a great Saturday. Still a little cloudy here in New York, and a little bit rainy, because we're supposed to have rain, but it's at least like 50 degrees or something. What is it? Oh, it doesn't tell me my temperature on this. I have an old Mac here. On my phone it would, but the other one doesn't. It's probably about like 45 outside, 50 maybe. Go enjoy the weather if you have. Go have fun. It's Saturday if you are not working or whatever. Do your thing. Woo woo! Alright. Love, light, and blessings, everybody. Namaste. Stay strong on the ascension path. You are doing awesome. You are being inundated with a lot of different things that is probably very hard to process right now. You are doing awesome. You are doing the best that you can, and you got this. Everybody's got this, regardless of how they react to it. All right? Love, light, and blessings, everybody. Namaste. See you on the flip side.